You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, Merry Christmas Eve, everybody. For those who are celebrating, of course, because, there's Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all kinds of holidays right now. But we're kind of on a Christmas trip here. And unfortunately,
Yes,
you know
sir.
what? It's too bad that you couldn't actually be here because, we always had that Christmas tree in the background. So this
Right,
this would have been
exactly.
the night where it would have actually made sense. But, hey, we're just glad that you were able to make the show. So with
That's
that,
right.
let's do the usual. I'm Eric Vansel,
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
and we're your hosts for this show. Have to get that in. So, and then, of course, Ronaldo was joining us a little bit earlier. Ted's here saying Merry Christmas Eve, y'alls. Hey, like I said, man, we're just glad to be here on this special night, because obviously we're supposed to be on Sunday, then we were supposed to be on yesterday. But I take it you're feeling better?
Yes, sir. I
At
am.
least good
I'm
enough to
feeling
do the show.
right, exactly.
Well, that's good, because we actually have to review, even though I'm sure episode 5 maybe dropped by now. I don't know, but
It just dropped like 7 minutes ago.
did it? Well,
Yeah.
all right.
It
You
drops
know,
at 9 on Tuesday. So
all right. Well, nothing like being a little bit behind the 8 ball here. Uh, so, hey, we're going to review episode 4. You'll get our review of episode 5 on, Lord willing, on Sunday. I got to say that now because, you never know.
yeah, exactly.
But, as it comes to no surprise, I don't know. First of all, did you like it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it suffered some issues, but overall I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I still think it's continuing the high quality storytelling and all the stuff that we've liked about it initially. So now I don't think that I'm going to. I don't think I'm going to fear going into the next episodes. Because for the first 3 or 4,
Yeah.
especially with Star Wars shows, you're just sitting there like, okay,
Bated breath. Like
exactly. Like, even if you like the debut, you're like, you know what? All right, it's a good debut. When are they going to mess this up? You're waiting for that other shoe to drop. Now, I think I could safely say, hey, look, there's going to be some quality differences between episodes, I'm sure. But now I feel safe to say, hey, other than Andor and the first couple of seasons of The Mandalorian, I'm really liking it so far.
Yeah, I really do enjoy the journey that we're on. We're still in a place where we don't we know what they're going after, but we don't know all there is to it. So I'm curious to see what that's going to be. Um, there's some mysteries in here definitely that we still have to get to, and we're 4 episodes in, so now we have 4 more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really going to be telling as well. Like these next 4, I'm really going to be looking for a lot of development in the story going forward. So, yeah, I can say that the setup so far has been great, and now I'm waiting for the big punch to come in. So, it should be a fun ride.
No, and you're absolutely right, because we are. I should point this out. We are halfway through through the season now. So yeah, we
Mhm.
need to now go. Okay, we've got all the setup. There's a lot of mysteries they put on the table, especially given this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we have to now start to get into a little bit of the payoff, I think. In other words, for episode 5, I would be disappointed if they continued, basically baiting us, right? Like if they kept dangling that carrot, like, okay, here's another couple of nuggets, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a bunch of stuff in this episode that basically dropped that now not only does it, it doesn't really answer anything that we've gotten so far, but it definitely deepens the mystery, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is starting to introduce some things, and there's some things that we still don't know. Like, for instance, when when Jod, had his other names, right?
Yep.
Crimson Jack and how man, this other one.
Well, I mean, that's
the other
mainly
one.
the big one. Yeah, that's
No,
the main. That's the
that
main
was a
one.
big one. What was the other one? You call him Captain something. I don't know. Somebody chatted in. Well, speaking of chatting it in, David is with us. So, we always love it when David's able to join us. If his chat would ever pop up. There it is. System's slow tonight. You gotta love computers. He says, hello, gentlemen. It's Star Wars Eve, LOL. So glad Lazarus has gotten up from the grave to join us tonight. The Laz. That's what we're going to have to start calling you from. I thought I was going to have to take your place, Daryl. I didn't actually think about that, but we used to do that with Dave. Like, I remember there was that time after your accident and all that stuff where I had done a few solo shows, and then I'm like, okay, man, I can't. This is like head to head. I mean, it's, it's basically based on a discussion based between two hosts. So I got Kazi to join us. So, yeah, that is a good point. I mean, if you're ever laid up for a long period of time, I can always tap David to come in. Well, that would be interesting. But you know what else I find interesting about basically all these episodes? That we never even talked about this. But once they released this episode, talking about episode 4 now, I realize 5 just dropped. But when they dropped episode 4, it's like these entire sentence titles.
Yeah.
Like, all these titles are just like these really long, drawn out, basically like these just long names. Where most of them basically have like, 3-4 words or something. These are like an entire sentence. But, yeah. I don't know. Let's get into this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, let's go to it.
Yeah. All right. So
Silvo, the other Captain Silvo.
Yes, that was it. Thank you. Man, like, this is driving me nuts. It was on the tip of my tongue. So yes, we did not get any answers to what was up with these alternate names. And I think, let me check my notes. No, you know what? So on last week's episode where I said what I'd like to see next, it was more about the Jewels of the Old Republic and more clues about Attin. Which we kind of got a little bit more. I mean, it's funny because when they landed on, what was it called? Attin or something like that?
Akron.
Yeah.
At Akron.
At Akron. I knew it was something like really similar. That I thought was pretty cool. I really liked the idea of this, the fact that these planets are similar. And the fact that SM-33 kind of gave us a little bit of exposition on it. And, he was talking about how it looks like Attin. And, it basically just gave us a lot more, I think, in terms of that, but without revealing too much. Because, again, it's like you pointed out, on one hand, we don't want this thing to drag on forever. But on the other hand, we don't want them to solve it in like 4 episodes either.
Yeah, right. Unless there's a plot that can be followed up after that, then that's fine. But yeah, I mean, I think that what made this episode kind of unique and cool was like, this is almost like if war had hit at Attin, this is what it would look like.
Yes.
And it's kind of had a Rogue One-ish vibe to it. But I think this was a cool story because it focused on Neil a lot. I love we got to see a lot more of his character and who he is and what motivates him as a person or an elephant, whatever. And this, once again, of course, he's like the cutest little thing in the world anyway. So that always kind of brings you some good feels. But I love the fact that it's like there's this kind of a circle of planets that all have like at something. So there's a at Akron, there's a at Attin, there's at whatever, and
yeah, that's what I mean. It's like they're all similar. I mean,
similar, yeah.
One of the favorite lines that I had, I forgot who said it, but somebody was like, "Everything's creepy here."
Oh,
Because somebody said something to the fact that, oh, this is like creepy or whatever, and somebody else is like, everything's creepy here. I mean, that was great.
yep.
And again, the comedy in this, very organic, not forced. It's just really natural given the situation. And you're right, this very much was Neil's story. This is where
Hmm.
Neil was taking the lead. But I like the fact, too, that they still gave the other characters something to do.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was
The thing is,
nice.
well, I was just gonna say the thing is, have you noticed um that this is one thing I really enjoy about this grouping of kids or characters, should I say, is that they're very reminiscent of the original trilogy characters.
Yeah. No, I got that same vibe, actually. They
Because
have
if you
that
look at like
same organic
Fern,
chemistry. Yep. It's kind of
well,
like the
Fern is
Leia.
like your Princess Leia.
Mm-hmm.
You got um you got Neil, who's more like the Repio.
Yep.
You have Wim, who's more like Luke. You have KP, who is R2. And then, you have Smee, who's kind of like their Chewbacca in a way.
Yep.
And then Jadna Naywood is kind of like Obi-Wan.
Mixed with a little
So
Han
if you,
Solo.
yeah, mixed with a little Han Solo in there.
He's kind of got
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
Han
that
Solo
scoundrel.
slash Obi-Wan type of vibe going. But no, absolutely. And I think that that's
So,
one of the reasons why this show is working. And
hmm
I think that that's why this thing is favorably viewed among a lot of Star Wars fans, is precisely because it does mirror the chemistry and the characterizations of the original trilogy, which again, it's
but
basically
it,
timeless storytelling.
but it's done in a creative way where like you took those characters from the original trilogy and you downsized them into kids, but then you kind of gave them their own identity within it. So it's like you're not ripping them off, but you can definitely see like I just said, like if you just really stop and think about it, like, oh, okay, you can plug this person into these slots
Yeah.
and it works.
But that's because when Lucas created each of those characters, they were archetypes, right?
Exactly.
They
Yep.
were basic,
Character
just
archetypes. Yep.
right, storytelling type. These are your basic character archetypes. And so because of that, now you're just plugging in a different set of characters into that. And I think that that's why it works so well. And that's probably why the chemistry is organic. And again, it's also important that you have a group of child actors who can actually pull it off. And,
Hmm.
they knocked it out of the park. Now, Ted basically says, I like the Snoopy Santa in Eric's background. Yeah, I try to do that, a little elf hat on my, it's hard to see because I don't have it lit up like usual, because usually it's supposed to be just the helmet, but yeah, I got a little bit of that. He says, I'm still enjoying the ride and hoping for a ramp up with episode 5 tonight. I'll watch it tomorrow. And yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think that now they need to start taking it up a notch. Although, I still thought that much like some of the previous episodes, you had a nice balance of character development and then some action. And it was hilarious too, because, they meet up with those warriors, and it's like instantly they're being sort of pushed out and thrust out into this thing. So it was really a growth opportunity for everybody, even though it did focus mostly on Neil, and it was about him conquering his fears and realizing that he has more in him and more potential than what he even believes. And I think that that's one of the things. And again, much like what Lucas was doing with the original trilogy, remember, he was aiming the original trilogy to kids. And so a lot of those messages, even though adults can get things out of it too, that's what it is. It's like, hey, I know the world's a big and scary place, but there's more inside you than what you realize, and you can achieve a lot of potential if you just believe in yourself. And so that was the overall message, I think, here, but wrapped in a really good, somewhat action-packed episode.
Yeah, I just love how vulnerable, in this open he was just, sitting down, like he would sit on the ledge, and he was just talking to her like, look, I'm not this warrior guy. This is not who I am. I'm not trying to be this. Like, look, I'm a scaredy cat. Like, I get it. He owns his own thing, and
Yep.
even admitting that like he got bested by his younger sibling, they even like bruised his or bent his trunk or something like that. I sprained it. And then, but I thought it was really nice that, when you saw someone who he was trying to just basically show her, like, look, you don't have to be this way. Like, you don't have to live like this. You don't have to. And he's basically was just telling her, hey, there's another world out there for you too. And one of the things I loved about her was that she said, your weakness is what makes you unique. And I thought that was like the cool message too. It's like,
Yep.
the fact that you aren't brave and you're not that type of, that's not your thing, but that makes you unique because you can see the good in people. You can see things don't have to be one dimension. Like, I can't see that all the time because I'm so focused on being a warrior and trying to, do this. Even her dad, though. I mean, the fact that you got your kids out here fighting these battles for you, I mean, it's kind of like,
Yeah, I know.
like, what the heck, man? Well, yeah,
Like,
listen
all
to
right,
kids out there.
it's a little bit of a different culture here, but I mean, yeah, I
Exactly.
know. I thought the same thing. I'm like, this is hilarious, and it's the
I'm
way.
like, all right.
And this is probably a good time too to point out that one of the things that was really refreshing about this episode to me was those warrior characters could have been derivative, and mirrored so many
Mhm.
others, but they weren't. They were unique. There was something unique and fresh about them. That even though this is a typical thing that you see in these type of movies, it was done in a very fresh way. And I thought that that was cool. And you're right, the fact that Neil, because of his kindness, because of his trust in people, there's a certain nobility about that. And then there's also a way of
Mhm.
seeing things that, like you said, he could see things in a more multidimensional way than she can. And so in a way, she was helping him be more brave, and he was helping her be a little bit less narrow in her focus and to
Yeah.
actually understand. And she even said, like, toward the end of the episode, like, we could use kindness here.
Yeah.
That would be kind of a nice thing to have. And so I thought that a lot of that was really good messaging. And the other thing that was nice is they didn't beat you over the head with it. You didn't feel like you were being
Right.
preached at, like,
Exactly.
all right, it's
Be
kind of like an
nice.
after
Be
school
nice to
special.
people.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Or like Kyle at the end of South Park, I learned something today. I mean, it's not. It was done in a very subtle, like it was obvious, but it was done in a subtle way, I think.
Yeah. The other thing that we got a chance to see was Fern, because we're so used to seeing her be the strong one.
Yes.
When she realized, like, hey, I failed.
That moment
she had
between
to
Fern
get-
and Wim, dude, was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. She had to kind of realize, like, look, I don't know what to do. I don't have the answer. And his belief in her, because those two are always kind of butting heads, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But you got a chance to see them really kind of connect in that moment, in that space where he's kind of like, okay, I need to reinstill my confidence in her because that's failing. And that helped her eventually solve the problem. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is what I would have done, if I were really a captain. Like, maybe he was told not to repeat it, because that's what I would have done. So now let me go back to, SM33 and say, hey, tell me about, at Attin, and basically, like, just override that
Well, that was kind
programming
of
that.
freaky too, actually. When
Yeah.
SM33 started attacking them, like,
Yeah.
rip limb to limb, and all that. I mean, that was
Yep.
another, once again, I mean, that was a scary moment. Like, this is one thing that I did not expect from this show. I did not expect, I guess I expected it to be almost like kiddie versions of a lot of this stuff, but it's not. I mean,
Mhm.
there's some genuinely sinister threatening moments in this series. This is like the third or fourth one that we've seen. And I remember it just being like, man, this is actually freakier than things we've seen in some of the more adult themed Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that Neil eventually passes out at the end of it all is hilarious.
That was great.
Because I was just, it's like, you know, so I thought that was,
But his bravery in that though was a nice bookend. The way everything started out.
It was. Yep.
And then because you also got to look at the other side of this too, because there's actually a lot going on in this episode when you really stop and thought about it. I mean, you also had the whole thing with Jod and SM-33, like their whole little subplot was cool, and the fact that it looked like he was bailing on him, but he came back and he basically got the other like creatures or whatever that they needed. It showed that Jod actually does care for these kids. And I thought that was a nice touch too.
Yeah, the fact that he stole the money. He's like, Wim was like, wait, where'd you get the credits for? Okay.
But it looked like he was just going to take it though.
Yeah, I mean, he was, but then I think he found a better use. And he's like, okay, well, I guess I can use this to bargain for what these people need, and I can use that as leverage to get the kids, and so it all worked out. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. So all the different jewels of the Old Republic, when they kept saying like at Attin, at Akron, and all the other ones, to me it just seems like all right, you got to go to the next jewel planet, because it's probably more like at Akron. They all have their similar look to them, and then one of them's got to have like the coordinates to at Attin.
Well, yeah, because the thing was, what was it that he basically, did he actually destroy it or did he save it? Because they
destroyed the coordinates because it was like a pillar.
But
the part with the coordinates were missing.
He took it, but didn't he basically like memorize them or something? Because I think
so, and yeah,
and that's where it has to get to next. So it makes me wonder, because again, that whole 9 Jewels of the Republic storyline is starting to get really good now. Like now you're starting to get enough information about this that you're like, ooh, I'm kind of into this now. So it does make me wonder, are they going to like what you're implying? Are they going to go to like the next at whatever planet and maybe discover some more stuff there? Do they basically go to Attin? Because the thing that I really love about this show, because this episode is no different than a few of the others. It's kind of weird, but I actually like the abrupt endings. Like something happens and then boom, the credits come up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like, and that's happened.
That's
like
cool.
What does
but
it
I think
frustrate
that also
you?
kind of affects well, sometimes with the pacing of it all, like that's the only part. Like,
well, yeah, it's like hitting a wall without question.
Well, not only that, but I mean, like the pacing of the episodes, right? So, like, we get the first 2 episodes. That's one big long thing, and then you get what's episode 3, and then that's a limited, and then 4 kind of. It's hard to find like a rhythm sometimes with the episodes, the way they're paced. That's all I'm saying.
No,
as far as time wise.
Well, time wise, but I mean, I just mean like in the last episode, in this episode, I think in even the first 2, their endings are just abrupt. It's like they go do something and all of a sudden the credits come up. And you're right. I mean, the pacing on that, because it's like just hitting a brick wall all of a sudden, like you don't expect it to end. I also agree that timing wise, this is something that always drives me nuts in every Star Wars show, is that you'll have some that are, I don't know, like 40 some minutes, some are like 28, 30,
37.
Right.
Then you have like,
but 22. I don't know. But here's the thing, and I'm wondering if you agree with this. I don't necessarily think, unlike some shows, I don't necessarily think that anything was too short or too long. And I definitely felt that way about some of the other shows.
Yeah, this one seems a little bit more leveled, as far as the time wise.
Yeah.
Um, and I really enjoy that because yeah, that's just we ran into that with the Mandalorian a lot of times where you get some long episode and it's like, man, this is really good, and you get a whole lot of information, and then the next episode, you're kind of just okay, doom doom. You're just like, really? Like it's over with already?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and the thing that would
okay.
drive me nuts about that is that, first of all, you got to endure like, I don't know, 5 minutes of just little introductory things. And
Hmm.
then when the episode does end, there's still like another 7 minutes left of credits.
Just credits.
So even if they say like, something's like, say, 32 minutes, I mean, in reality, it's like 26.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's even more frustrating. But this show, yeah, I think that it's a little bit more, even though it does have different run times, I felt satisfied after each episode. Like, I don't feel anything ran too long. I don't think anything was like, oh man, I mean, sure, you need more information. You're going to want more information. It's like, oh, wait, keep going. I want to know more about the 9 jewels of the Old Republic or whatever. Sure, there's that. But if you just take it based on each episode, I don't necessarily think that there was an episode that prematurely ended. But I do like the style that they have where the ending is somewhat abrupt.
Almost like a little cliffhanger, basically.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, but it's almost like instead of something ending like on a downbeat, it just ends like in the middle of some sort of a thing, and you're like, whoa, it's almost like if you stop talking in the middle of a sentence instead of at the end of one. I mean, the endings
All right.
where they end makes sense, but it's just really abrupt.
Right.
And at first I thought I was going to find that off-putting, but the more episodes that I see, it's sort of a stylistic thing and I kind of like it. Like it doesn't not only doesn't it bother me, but I actually think that I kind of like it.
Yeah, it is a nice I guess story or style technique to use to
Mhm.
kind of bring something different to the Star
Yeah,
Wars. So yeah, I'll give
exactly.
you
It's a,
that.
it's a little bit different. Just like the way that they did. Now I noticed that they didn't really do this beyond the first episode where they had the text. They didn't do the typical opening crawl thing, obviously, but the way that they did it in this show, I thought was actually good. Like, it's probably my favorite way that they've done something since the original trilogy, or I should say the saga films, because they all had the opening crawl.
Mhm.
Because, the Rogue One was just really bizarre. Now, I don't know
Yeah,
if
that
that
was
was
really weird.
bizarre because that was the first time we ever saw that, but I don't know, even still going back and watching Rogue One, I'm still like, it's kind of weird the way they did this.
Well, that's what Akron kind of reminded me of. It kind of reminded me like we're in a Rogue One esque um thing. I mean, even Jod was just like, "This is at Attin." It's like reminds me of my home planet. It's like Ash
Yeah.
and
Well, and
you know.
actually, honestly, I think that your description was perfect. It's basically like if Attin went through a war. And I think maybe that's the
Hmm.
point. Because remember, one of the
Right.
things that we saw was these kids had no idea there was even a galactic war that happened.
Yeah. Not only that, but I think these kids don't even realize like they didn't realize how vast the world is, what it looks like. So they're only kind of stuck in their little world of at
Hmm.
Attin, and it's all quiet, peaceful, and quaint. And I think that's where we're kind of going to get to is that I think I think at some point people were looking for at Attin and it's remained hidden. And they go into at Akron, at all these other places trying to find at Attin. And they were decimating, the planets because they couldn't find what they were looking for.
No, that's a really good guess. That's a good educated guess because I think they are trying to set something up if they don't put us at Attin within the next episode or two, there's a reason for it. Because you can look at this two different ways. You could say, well, on one hand, you want them to just, it's like, okay, we've drawn this out now. I think we just need to get to the planet and deal with, because there's a lot to deal with on the planet. If you think about it, there's a lot of story they can tell once they reach the planet. Now, it could be for a season 2. I could see that. But much like what I think you and I always said about the movies, we sort of ported that over to television series. It's like, look, it's fine if you have an like this overarching story arc that goes across multiple seasons. But if you start something in a season, you should end it in that season. You know? I mean, if it's kind of like, okay, if the idea is these guys are looking for AT-AT and all this stuff, they need to wrap that up in this season. Now, the ramifications about AT-AT and things that they do once they get there, that could obviously go into a season 2. But I definitely think that they need to do something with that. Now, Ronaldo joins us. He says, I think he means, what's up, guys? He goes on to say, great episode. Neil was the MVP. Yep. We basically said that. And then he has an interesting question for us. He says, any idea on who is the supervisor? That's a really good question. And that actually goes into what I'm talking about right now, is the fact that there's a lot of stuff on Attin that really needs to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm. Because we don't know if it's a former Imperial. We don't know if it's like New Republic. Like, what,
Well, the thing is, they obviously talk about the New Republic, right? So you
probably think it was the New Republic. That's my first guess.
Right. Because at first, when this thing premiered, and we saw a little bit about how the AT-AT government works, and it's like, then, they reveal, like, hey, look, all our parents are analysts. What's up with that? Right? Like, there's still some mysteries there. So, on one hand, it could just be the way they govern their planet. They're part of the New Republic, but they just, this is just kind of the way they do things. Or maybe there's something a little bit more nefarious and sinister going on. Now, here's a question for you, though.
What's up?
Well, how much do you think needs to be tied up this season? And what, if anything, do you think could carry to the next season and everybody still be satisfied and not attacking the show? That's the thing. Star Wars fans tend to be a little bit touchy on some of this stuff. And conceivably, some things would have to be wrapped up this season, but you could, like I said, maybe nothing, maybe a lot of things.
I think what we need to see, if they were to do it, they would need to wrap up, of course, getting back to Attin and figuring out, like, okay, here we are. This is where we started from.
Mm-hmm.
We need to figure out what Jod is looking for. And I think we can wrap that in with the supervisor as far as what they're doing on Attin. And then you can leave that for the next season. Like, okay, that would be the perfect, like, okay, stopping point, because we've gotten resolution, we've gotten you back to home, back to your parents, and then now we can pick up like next season if you want. Maybe the kids are a little bit older, and now they've got a little bit more life skills under their belts, and now they're kind of trying to figure out, okay, what the heck is this going on our planet? That's the next mystery. That's the next adventure.
See, I like that, because,
and then how that ties in with Jod and
right,
everything like that.
Well, one of the things that I love about that is that makes it to where the first season, the story was outward, and for the second season, now it's inward.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I mean, I think a good concluding point in this show would be Jod gets them back. and you wrap up all the mysteries surrounding Jod. Why is he
Mhm.
also called Crimson Jack? Why is he also called, Captain Silva? What's up with all that? Right? It's almost like the Nightmare Before Christmas song, Something's Up with Jack. It's like, why do you got all these different names? Why are you so like mysterious
Yeah.
and secretive? What's up? Are you really a Jedi? Do you use like magnets? Are you faking the Force? I mean, there's a lot of different mysteries just surrounding him, because don't forget, you also have to tie in all the stuff that we saw before with the pirate attacks.
Yeah. Well, so that's the cool thing I love about how they're doing this is that although Jude Law is Jude Law, right? He's an actor with, of his own caliber.
Pretty high pedigree, yeah.
They don't highlight him too much like in the show. Like
Nope.
he's not the focus, it's the kids.
Yep.
But he's in there enough and they deal with him enough where he's like, okay, I have my moments, I have my things to kind of keep you on your toes, add a little bit of mystery to the pot, and then I let you go again. And then you kind of go down this whole rabbit hole, and then you come back to him. Oh, okay, well, here's a little bit more mystery. Now go. And that's kind of how I feel when I'm watching him on this show. It's very he's okay with playing somewhat of the background, at least for right now, because it's not about him.
Well, what I find interesting is you're right. He's not the main focus, but in a lot of ways, he is a central character because, if you think about
Yep.
it, it's almost the way Andor is. Because Andor, he's the namesake of the show, but he's surprisingly not always the focus of the show.
Right.
And this is sort of the thing where Jod, he's not the central character, but he's probably the character that has the greatest impact.
Yeah.
Because he's the core of the mystery. If you think about it, it's sort of like a 3-part storyline. You had the mystery of Attin and the 9 Jewels of the Old Republic. That's one. You have basically the coming of age story of the kids. But then you also have this mystery on who this Jod guy actually is. And he seems to be the connective tissue between all these different storylines. So he's basically the hub, even though he's not necessarily the focus. So yeah, I agree. I think they have to basically tie at least the mystery, so that way moving into season 2, he could just be part of the crew or whatever. Like he's part of the group. I don't know. We'll have to see. Ronaldo says, I believe Jod is just a pirate that happens to be Force sensitive. Not a Jedi or a Padawan, just a guy that uses the Force. I mean, look, that's basically Broom Kid from The Last Jedi, right? I mean, you basically have this whole message that the Disney era was trying to put out there for a while, and then they sort of pivoted a little bit. But the idea is that the Force is there for everybody. And you just have the Jedi and the Sith and all these people that just, have this like dogma attached to it. But, a lot of people are out there using the Force just to, get the remote controller, force push their younger sister, into a ditch or something. I don't know. I mean, it's you basically just have like these normal people that aren't necessarily aligned with any group.
Right. And that's something you've never seen before either. You don't see that in Star Wars where you're just, a regular Joe Schmo with the Force, without being attached or trying to be like, you're not like trying to, like, you have Wim who's trying to be a Jedi, and then you got this guy who's like, yeah, whatever. They're polar opposites of each other.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it was a message that they started out, at least through Rian Johnson's film, but that just more or less got lost after that. Now, the interesting thing is, even going back to the expanded universe days, there was a book called I, Jedi. I forgot who the name of the main character, but that was like, Yeah, he was just basically like a rogue Jedi. He was a Jedi, but he just sort of like he was the first example of what we now call a
Gray.
gray Jedi. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
the thing is, all through the expanded universe of old, now called Legends, you saw many examples of Force users that weren't necessarily aligned to any group, and I think that Disney maybe now is starting to go, hey, let's explore that a little bit. And this is the perfect vehicle to do that because everybody's got their thing. There's a couple of different things that you have to explore with these characters that I believe have to probably be done to the point where they're fully established by the end of the season. We already know Wim and Fern's thing. One of the things about KB that's interesting is that she seems to be on this more or less self-discovery too, right? I mean, she has this innate sense of curiosity that sometimes lands her in danger. So she has to use a little bit more, aware. She has to be a little bit more aware of her surroundings, I think.
Mhm.
And that's sort of where we're going with her a little bit. And then of course, Neil obviously we dealt with him somewhat. And then with Jod, it's been heavily implied, maybe even confirmed, that he's the same guy that we saw killing that guy in the beginning that was leading that, pirate raid or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, they've already established this guy being pretty ruthless. Now he has a soft spot for these kids. Obviously, it's pretty much going to be that, not so much the Vader type redemption arc, but more the Han Solo type. Where Han
Gotcha.
Solo is still basically Han Solo, but he cares more and he's not so much for himself. He's a little bit more part of the group mentality, I guess, and doing the right thing. And, he always does the right thing in the end, that kind of deal. I think that that's where they're headed with Jod.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yep, the lovable scoundrel almost.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something that we've only really seen once with Han Solo. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
you could say Lando too, to a different degree, but even the Lando one, even though it's basically it's the same basic deal, it's a little bit differently in the way that it was done.
Yeah, Lando is he's more of a smoother taste, you know,
Right.
versus
Less rough
like,
around the edges, yeah.
less rough around the edges, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean,
So what do you have hopes for next episode? Well,
next
basically
episode.
tonight.
Well, yeah. You mean as of like probably an hour ago now?
Yep.
Like I could just watch it right now and see if it comes true. Well, I only actually had two things. I mean, it's funny. Usually I have three. Usually I'm trying to whittle it down to three, like the three
Mhm.
main things. I only really have two for this one. One, I want more info about SM-33's former captain because
Okay.
just, who knows? Maybe that was Jod. I don't know. But whoever it was, whoever programmed them, like, hey, anybody ever comes looking for this thing, tear him apart limb by limb. Yeah, who was that guy? And what was his role in it? It's the implication is it could be Jod, but you don't know. And then, of course, let's get some more exposition on who Jod really is. Let's start to really unravel this thing a little bit. I mean, again, this is something that they might drag out to where the season finale is like a big reveal of some sort. And then, but I think that might be too late because I think what they might want to do, particularly if they take your idea, I mean, not that they're watching the show and going, that Daryl guy's got to, hey, let's write this down for the next season, right? But I mean,
Right.
if it basically works out to where the first season was more of an outward focus and the second scene is more of an inward. In other words, they're going to focus more on Attin and those mysteries. And, who is the supervisor and why is everybody an analyst and that kind of a thing. Okay, great. Then maybe wrap up the Jod thing and let's fully realize who he is by maybe episode 6 at the latest to give you episode 7 and 8 to set up what you want to do for the next season.
Gotcha. I think for me, it's going to be Um, I'm gonna say like I want to see now more like okay, like what's up with Fern. I think she's gonna be the next character we need to because she's kind of the leader, and I need to know like what her deal is and why she's um why is she the way that she is. Um, I
That's a
also
good
want to
point.
see um I think I want to see more of John, of course, and figuring out what's going on with him, and then of course what's up with like you said the analysts like at Attin. Like let's go back to those parents and figure out like okay, hey, we're doing this with the supervisor, and they're not doing like I want to kind of see how they're processing all this that's going on and what they're still doing trying to get their kids back, um and maybe how that's affecting their work because I remember that was like the big thing. Like no one's been able to get outside the bubble or whatever the thing, the shield, and now this happened. So does that compromise what they're doing?
Right.
So
Yeah. What's really
those are the
happening
things
on
I was
that
saying.
end? And
Yeah.
if they really want to be the ultimate jokesters, they got to put an ad on Attin.
Oh yeah, of course.
That right there, that would make my day, I
Yep.
think. All right, rating
You found out
time.
that's what they meant. That's probably what they're
Yeah, that's right.
manufacturing them at.
Right, exactly.
They're building ads
Well,
on
there
ad
would be like a
ad.
big gold one probably, but So what are you going to give this episode rating wise?
I'll give it a 7.
7.5 for me.
Okay.
Yep. But we're kind of right around in that 7 range.
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, I thought it was a really good episode. It's no indictment on the quality of the show or the episode or anything, but they can't all be like super supreme. Actually, I'm surprised everything's been as good as it is, honestly.
Well, yeah, like this episode, I didn't feel like we advanced the story overall,
Right.
but I felt like we got more of the heart from Neil. So it's like we kind of traded off from like, okay, we're not going to give you so much of the story on this time around. We're going to give you more character development on this.
Exactly. It's
And
like they
then,
didn't advance the story, they advanced the characters though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so Ronaldo unsurprisingly gives it 8.5 out of 10. He says because I love Neil.
Right,
That's
don't we all?
and you know what? I will not argue that at all. Because
I
Neil is
love his
probably
voice, man.
he's like my favorite character of the show.
He
I mean, it's
is.
like the weirdest thing, but he's like I never thought in a million years,
I know.
that it would
Reminds
be
me of
him.
Babar.
Yeah. Actually, yes. Or like some sort of space Dumbo or something,
Yeah, exactly. Like
especially
like
the
I don't
movie
know, like,
version.
he gives me like a little Lilo and Stitch vibe, like Ohana means family, like that. I don't know.
He's
It's
the
a
baby
weird.
Yoda of this show.
Yep. Oh, definitely.
Trust me,
Definitely.
if they made a Neil t-shirt, I'm first in line. I'm going to wear it on the show. I am totally team Neil on this one. And that's surprising.
Exactly.
Because my draw, remember when we didn't care about this show at all and we're like, great, now we got to review another stupid thing that we don't want to first visions now this, right? I mean,
Right.
when that was happening, the first thing that came out that made me go, I don't know, is when Jude Law signed on for it. Because
Mhm.
Jude Law, he's not, that'd be like
Yeah.
Robert De Niro or somebody like that coming into, the Star Wars universe. This isn't, like some of these other people. I mean, this is like, all right, this is a serious actor here. If he's on board, then something, that was one of the reasons why when people were questioning it, I was still not necessarily being a Star Wars apologist, but I was still going, I don't know, man. I think it's going to be
Yeah.
good because I just don't think that Jude Law would do something that isn't
Yeah.
good. He's like, Jude Law is not going to do Ahsoka. He's not going to do The Acolyte,
Mm-mm.
but he'll do this. So I think that's pretty much spot on. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we get some more answers. I mean, yeah, granted, I mean, after this show, we could all just go watch 5 It's like,
Yep.
hey, everybody, we'll meet back in like an hour.
Everybody hop on Discord.
Yeah, everybody, yeah, exactly. And, we could talk about 5 before the actual show. But, hopefully, and hey, you guys are welcome to hop on Discord and actually let us know what you guys thought of the show, because I really do want to do more on that. And don't forget, including after this show, I'm probably going to be on Call of Duty, as I usually am. And I do hop on Discord. We have a Call of Duty lobby in that. So, I mean, if you guys are hopping on the game or you just want to chat with me while I'm playing the game, you're welcome to do it. By the way, for those of you guys who are actually putting our playlists and everything on Endless Loop, it is helping the watch hours. I know I've been putting out and like basically this whole thing on our community tab, like, please do this, because that's where we seem to be suffering right now. Like, don't get me wrong, I still want you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, all the usual stuff. But in order for us to get monetized, in order for us to start bringing more value to you guys, we got to get those watch hours up. And it seems like we can never get more than like 15 or 1,600. And you need at least 3,000, the first level, 4,000 if you want to be, fully on. Well, it's starting to work, because in the last couple of weeks, we've gotten 300 more hours. Now, I'm doing it on a computer or two. But for those of you guys who are doing it, fantastic. Keep it up. For those of you who aren't, just whenever you guys are doing something in the background, you're not using your computer, just throw our stuff on loop for a little bit and let it play. Let those watch hours go up. That would really help us out. That could be our Christmas present, in the spirit of Christmas.
There you go.
There you go. We don't, we're not asking for gift cards. We're not scammers. We're not a call center in India, right? I probably shouldn't say that, because 90% of our subscribers are from India. So, oops. Hey, I'm sorry. That's where a lot of these scammer guys are calling from. But if you guys want to do something nice for us for this holiday season, just put our videos on Endless Loop. All right? And then we will all be back, hopefully Sunday. Just keep watching. You hit the notification bell, you'll always be notified. I'm also going to try to put together some of those YouTube and TikTok shorts for, while I have a little bit of time this holiday season. So look for those. So until next week, when we do episode 5 of Skeleton Crew, be here for our review. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the force be with you, always.